All right, my friends, welcome back to another episode of the Build Show podcast. That's right, my weekly time to get together with you guys and go deep. And if you're watching the podcast, you might even notice this if you're listening only. We're in a brand new studio. I got my business partner, Tim Hill, here. We're in the brand new Reisinger Build podcast studio. This is a new space that we built and fabricated, I don't know, 6 months ago, Tim? Something like that?
3 or 4, yeah.
You may have seen even the Unbuild It podcast from this space, but this is my first time actually podcasting from here. This is a really cool space. The team did a fabulous job on this. But our topic today, I think, is one that's going to be really near and dear to general contractors, builders, and remodelers. We're going to be talking specifically about profit, understanding profit, some tips for better profitability. Also, frankly, how to talk to your clients about your profit margin and profit and what they're charging or what you're charging them to help them understand that. We got a lot of good stuff to dig into. I've got my business partner, Tim Hill, here. Between the two of us, we've got over 70 years of construction experience. So this is two old guys that have been around the block that are going to give you some good advice on profitability. The Build Show podcast from the Reisinger Build Studios. Let's get going. Hey, before we jump in with Tim Hill today about profitability, I want to say a big thanks to our podcast sponsor, Arkland. If you don't know this company, they're the ones who have come out with this brand new fireproof or fire-treated, fire-resistant, I don't know the exact term, plywood called FirePoint. And Arkland is kind of a bit of an unknown company in the industry. They're kind of the Intel inside in the construction home building market in that they make all kinds of products that go into products that we would know and that we're using in our houses, but we don't know them as builders because they're selling direct to manufacturers. For instance, almost all the drywall that's produced in America has some of their products in it, and they make some kind of binder, homogenizer, I don't even know. They make a lot of the glues that are used by almost all the manufacturers that are making wood-based products, OSB, plywood, that sort of thing. They also directly manufacture most of the MDO plywood and some of the other specialty plywoods in the United States. So they're an interesting company. They've come out with this product called FirePoint, which is a half-inch CDX product, and it's got an intumescent coating on the face. I've got a video that's probably been published already by the time you listen to this, where I put it on a test rack and tested it. And I got to tell you, I was shocked by how long it resisted fire going through it compared to almost everything else in the market that is out there. It actually, if you use this as part of a 60-minute rated assembly, you'll actually exceed code by over 50% because this product allows you to get up to 90 minutes on a 60-minute assembly by basically swapping out 5/8 type X on the outside of a house that you might use in a fire-rated 1-hour wall. Now you use their FirePoint product, and so you've got more than code. You also have a normal product that your framers are used to installing, which is, a plywood-based sheathing on the outside. No fragility that you might have with using exterior drywall, exterior gyp. Also, no worry about, oh my gosh, we just put our exterior gyp up and it's supposed to rain later. I'm worried about it getting soaked. This is able to be exposed for 6 months. So lots of benefits here. Really interesting product. You can learn more on their website, which is firepoint.arkland.com. Tim, we're talking about profitability today, and I want to set the tone on this by saying, I think a lot of folks in the world that aren't builders and remodelers have this feeling of, those greedy builders or those greedy developers, they're making all this money and doing X, Y, and Z that makes the houses cheaper or whatever. What's your reaction to when you hear that kind of thing?
Wow, there's a lot to unpack about profitability in the home building and remodeling industry. But I'll say that there's a huge misconception about how we make money and the amount of money that we actually make across the industry, across the country. The general average of net profit among home builders and remodelers is 5 to 6%. Yeah. Which in most industries they would laugh at you and say, "Why are you even bothering?"
So let's bring that into a number category. Let's say you do $1 million in business as a remodeler, which is not a small number. To get to $1 million in gross, you might have to do, how many? 7 kitchens or
That's right.
10 bathrooms.
That's right.
That builder, remodeler, is going to make $50,000 at the end of the game.
They're going to pay tax on
$50,000
to $60,000 at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, those numbers are going to change depending upon the overhead expenses and the burden that builder remodeler is carrying.
Right.
If this is an individual working out of the back of their truck, obviously their overhead expenses are lower,
Sure.
and their net's going to be higher.
Right.
Right. But for standard, we have an office, 2 or 3 staff kind of operations, that 5 to 6% seems to hold pretty true.
Yeah. Which means if you want to make $100,000 as a business owner, you got to do at least, let's say, $2 million in business.
That's right.
To get there. And that doesn't even account for the other risks that you take by building houses, right?
That's right. No, I think that's another point that we need to bring out. And relative to the risk that is involved in home building and remodeling, the profit is extraordinarily low.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Yeah.
We're not encouraging people to get into the business by this podcast at this moment, are we?
Right. Now, to look at it in another direction, that most business analysts that said, "Oh, would you do $1 to $2 million a year in annual sales?" Well, for a small business, that can be pretty good.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
But in most small businesses, their profits before taxes would be 20-25%.
Right.
So $2 million, they'd be making $500,000 a year to pay taxes on. But in our industry, it's not, especially relative to the risk. The risk is, a lot of personal injury risk on job sites.
Absolutely.
A lot of finance risk if things go south.
Yeah.
If you're only netting 5% and you miss your budget by 5 or 6%, you may end up doing the job for free.
Yeah. And
Right.
that's happened to just about everybody I know, including us over the years.
That's right. Live and learn.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So profit is scarce to come by, and frankly is tough to get there. How do we give our podcast listeners some advice on making sure they at least make their 5 or 6%, or maybe increase that number, Tim?
Well, I think you have to break down your profit and loss statements to understand the moving parts. And if you can manage the individual moving parts of your profit and loss, then you can see the areas that are able to be maximized or made more efficient, if you will.
Yeah.
So just to start off, your sales, everyone has a hope each year, what we would call the budget projection of how much they can, we call it throughput in a given year. Even if you sell a project this year, some projects may take more than a year.
Yep.
How much of that project can you throughput, or how much can you how much work can you get done in that year? That's the amount of annual gross profit you would have dedicated for that specific job. And if you schedule it out and you plan for it, you have to stick to that plan and make sure that you do, in fact, meet those throughput goals, those sales goals.
Yeah.
Most of our projects that we do take 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, that's right.
And so we spread out. If we sell a $5 million project, we may do $2.5 million one year, $2.5 million the next. Well, if you take a $2.5 million throughput for a year for that job, you divide it by 12, that's around $225,000 a month on that job that we will throughput.
Yep, that's right.
So for us to sell or throughput, let's say $12 million a year, $10 million a year in total throughput, we've got a lot of work to do to maintain that.
Yeah, that's right.
So
And
that
then-
means we have like 5 or 6 jobs going that each of them are trying to produce $200,000 to $250,000 a month in throughput.
Yeah, and we're always trying to figure out as a business, first off, how do we get the job to the starting line in a time that we feel like works, right? Because if you miss the start on a job by 2 or 3 months, you may easily miss your plan for the year.
Right.
And so that pre-construction is so critical. In fact, we have one whole person, Chelsea, on our team who's dedicated to nothing but pre-construction and making sure that we get our jobs to that starting line, to that contract point. And then we have a lot of other people making sure they go from contract to completion. which also is equally important. I had a great podcast with Jeremy. What's Jeremy's last name? I can't think of it all of a sudden. From Richard Martin. Thank you, Jeremy Martin. And we had I don't know, 5 or so 10-minute discussion on, if you take a job that takes a year and you do it in 10 months, you're wildly more profitable.
Sure.
You take a job that you expect to take a year and you do it in 18 months, you're wildly unprofitable.
That's right. Yeah.
Because you've got these resources dedicated for a year, but now you've got resources for 18 months. You end up making just so much less. And you can't, once you miss that, you can't make it up for the year. We just had that discussion in our meeting at lunchtime today, didn't we?
That's right. Now, I think we're sort of jumping to the conclusion or the summary of this whole conversation, and it's about planning and then working to your plan.
Right.
All of your profitability, all of your success as a builder remodeler is made before you scratch the ground. Mm-hmm. It really is. It's all about planning and then working to that plan.
Yep.
Whether it's working to your budget plan on a given project or working to your budget plan for your overall overhead expenses for the company. Both of those, you have to plan for them tightly and you have to manage to those tightly. I think if you don't do that with the smaller profit margin as we have, smallest deviations make a huge difference. If you can plan for $2 million of throughput in a year and you do 2.2, a lot of that excess is gravy.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yeah,
but if you fall
point.
short and do 1.8, now you're working for pennies.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's really critical that we make a great plan, think it through, talk to all the players and make sure we have a good understanding and set all the expectations that need to be set and then work to that.
Had you thought about, or did you want to talk about that planning process, or did you have another direction you wanted to take us?
No, I think that's a good conversation to have. We go way out of our way to make sure that we communicate with the entire design team and the clients to understand what their expectations are.
Yep.
And so that we can include or anticipate every one of those aspects or design features into our budget and schedule planning.
Yeah.
Because the best budget and the best schedule is only as good as the information you have to create it.
That's right.
Right? That's one of the reasons we almost have to do cost plus in our jobs is because there are a number of things that we really just don't know the answers to when we start.
Yeah.
And we find them out along the way as the design team and the clients feed them to us. Mm-hmm. But as much as we know and as much as we can predict, we do plan to that through a detailed pre-construction process so that by the time we do get started, we have something to start us off and a guidebook to guide us.
One of the things I think you're especially good at, Tim, and that you've really changed the way the ship steers around here, is you're really good at bad news first and not letting a client's desire or whatever they say come out of their mouth. Like, I can't be a penny over, let's just call it $1 million. I think we started working together in 2011, 2012, somewhere
like
around
that.
there. I think prior to you and I working together, a lot of times when I heard a client say a number, I was trying to do everything I could to get to that number, even if I was cutting my legs off on a job. And so I was tightening budgets here and there, doing whatever I needed to do to get to this, whatever the vague understanding of, they're not going to do it if the number shows 1.1 or whatever the number was. And I remember several meetings with you early on when we were with clients where you would look them in the eye and say, that budget that I've got in there is really an important number. And I think we really need that. We really shouldn't cut that. And that could have been anything from porta potties to finished carpentry to paint, whatever. And I remember thinking a couple times, oh my gosh, Tim's basically flying in the face of what these customers are saying they want. But in reality, he knows this is the budget we need for this, whatever insert, cost code phase on the job. And sure enough, that was right. And not to say we're always perfect. We've absolutely been over budget on plenty of jobs and plenty of line items over the years. But 9 times out of 10, when you say this is what we need, that's what we need.
Yeah, and this is tough because we are continually in the mode of selling to our clients. Mm-hmm. And it's not just selling us, It's selling our wisdom, our knowledge, and
That's
our
right.
experience.
Yeah.
So when you give information to a client that they don't want to hear because they're hoping for something different, you have to back it up.
Yep.
You have to be able to say, my years of experience have told me that these are justified answers or expectations for you to have.
Right.
And I can show you historically the last 5 houses we've done. Here's the average of what we spent on that.
Right.
Lay it out for them, because that in itself will give them the reassurance that we know what we're talking about,
Yep.
and hopefully give you the budget and the plan that you need to be profitable.
And that's a hard one too. I mean, these are conversations that you're wondering, especially if this is pre-contract, which I'm talking about that period of time that's almost like a dating relationship.
Yeah.
Like, is this going to work out? Are we going to get married? Like, I frankly, I need this job. I'm excited about this, or I've been working with them for 9 months. I don't want to lose this. I don't want to give them a budget that is going to turn them away. But if you do that, now you're stuck married to a client that has a poor expectation for whatever, and you're continually jogging to try and make up to that.
I think as a young builder, and you always like to say, what would me as an older builder tell myself as a younger builder?
Yeah, for sure.
And I can honestly say to my younger self that the projects that I've lost because I was too direct or too my expectations were too high of the client to understand what things really cost, and they wouldn't come around because they didn't want to hear it, or they had unrealistic expectations. If I lost those jobs looking back, I didn't lose anything.
Oh, 100%.
Really. And the ones that I actually got because I chased them when I shouldn't chase them, I wish I never got.
I mean, we have one a few years ago that we regularly talk about in our office, that the red flag should have been when we came back to the office and said, this is a portfolio builder. We got to do this job. As soon as you say that, you might as well shoot yourself, because that job is going to be a loser.
Yeah.
And no matter how cool it is, no matter what in you think you're going to get with referral source, architect, this is going to be in the cover of a magazine, whatever, it's not worth it. If you catch yourself saying, this is going to be a portfolio builder, you should know that is a stop sign that you need to stop at and go back to that client and say, you know what? I was wrong on this budget. As I've rethought about it, it actually needs to be this. So if I've misled you, I apologize. If this means that we need to part ways, no problem. But don't continue down a path if you realize that you've made a
we had
mistake.
That conversation here in the office yesterday about which jobs we are better fit for, and we've always said, if there's a good combination of architect, client, and budget, then we're interested in pursuing that work.
Right.
And there can be strong aspects of one of those and weaker of the other, and probably figure out a way to. But the bottom line is, we can find jobs that are that clients are willing to pay money, but they're not jobs that require high skill level. They're not going to be high performance projects because the design is just not suitable to that, and the aesthetic is just not there. And that's as important to us as a good budget. So
That's right.
we have to balance what we are seeking and what the good fit is, because, again, clients and builders have to be aligned in their expectations and their vision.
That's right.
Right.
And another kind of ancillary point in that I would tell my younger self, the younger Matt Reisinger, 2 things. Don't apologize for your budget, your profit margin, whatever you charge as a builder. And also, don't assume that they can't afford it. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Right.
As an old story that I've told before that I love is my very first house I built in Austin. This was a 2005 build when I was just Matt Reisinger solo. When I finished the house and put it on the market, I was doing my own open houses on the weekends. And this guy pulled up. His name was Bill Giordani. He pulled up in cut-off jeans, like jorts, right? He was driving a 15-year-old Plymouth minivan. And, as we start talking, I find out he's divorced, yada, yada. I'm thinking, how's this guy going to afford this? I think it was a $1.2 million house. This is the Elton Lane house that I built.
Yeah.
And I judged him in my mind. Well, that guy bought the house. He had plenty of money. He was also one of my favorite customers. It turned out to be a great friend. I was sad when he moved out of the house 4 or 5 years later. He gave me his son's piano. And here I think back and thought, man, had I pretend like I was on my phone or whatever because I thought, oh, this guy can't afford it, I would have lost out on a fabulous sale, a fabulous client, and a good friend. And so it's something we need to remember. And frankly, I need to continue to remind myself, just because I have a client that pulls up in a Rolls Royce doesn't mean that he's got money. And just because I've got a client that pulls up in a Plymouth doesn't mean they don't have money, right? Don't judge people by what they look like, what they wear, what they drive. Just be really upfront with, here's the cost, and here's my fees, and shut up.
Right. That's exactly right. I think in many industries, many other business sectors, they say never pre-qualify your clients.
Yeah.
Don't judge them based on first impression, because it is a journey.
That's
in
right.
our business, and one of our previous business associates used to say this all the time, that clients have such a strong will and a strong desire to reach certain unrealistic goals that for them to finally understand what realistic goals should be is a journey.
It is. That's
and
right.
that you need to take them along on that journey gently, informatively.
That's right.
Give them all the information that they need and justify and prove up all the information. And I believe most of those good clients will come along on that journey with you.
That's right. And if they drop off the journey, they weren't a good client to begin
That's
with.
exactly
And
right.
don't pursue them because it's a portfolio job. 100%.
Yeah. I want to spend a few minutes talking about the components of our P&L statement. The way most builders break this down is they have gross sales, which is the amount that they're going to throughput on all of the projects that they do. And the cost components of those projects are the hard costs, the sticks and bricks, as we all call them, right?
Yep.
And the soft costs. And the soft costs are not just things like dumpsters and porta potties, but they're also things like our project managers, right? Because we wouldn't have those project managers if it weren't for those jobs. So project managers are an indirect cost of the work. That's an important concept for everyone to understand. Don't treat them as overhead. Even though they are an overhead burden, they're also a project burden because you have those expenses because of the project.
That's right.
Right? So all the expenses that go into project management cost are an indirect cost of the job. If you take that indirect cost plus the direct cost and subtract it from your gross sales, that is your gross profit.
Right.
Right.
And as a side note of that, we actually charge hourly for our project managers.
That's right.
To try and be as transparent as possible on a cost plus job. But then we charge a builder fee, including project manager costs. And that is a part of the job. And so don't put that below the line. And if you're currently a builder that's kind of absorbing that as part of a builder fee, whatever fee you charge, that includes project management, that can be one way that you can move towards doing better and nicer and more detailed custom homes is by breaking out that project management cost and really budgeting correctly to have people on the job managing those jobs.
That's right. In your project budget, project management should be a line item. And it should be. And it doesn't have to be exact. I mean, it can be just a budget line item. You estimate the number of months that you're going to be on that project and the cost of a project manager. Most project managers don't take a full 8-hour day, 5 days a week to manage a project.
Yep.
Usually most project managers can manage a given project in half a day or something.
That's
so
right.
It's not a fully burdened to that job. Maybe it's spread out over 2 jobs, or maybe they help with some overhead costs.
That's right. Maybe they're doing estimating too, or whatever.
Right. That's right. So that's the best way to do it. But only budget for that in the project budget at cost. Take the project manager's salary, add their burden, which is their transportation, their fuel, their
Cell
cell
phone.
phones, computers,
Yep.
insurance, taxes, all those things. That's your cost of that project manager. Then, as a cost of the work, it's subject to markup,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Subject to fee. So just like any other cost, just like plumbing, electrical, lumber, any of that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. It is kind of crazy if you think about it, circling back to where we started with, that most builders in the U.S., frankly, including us, really kind of net out around 5 to 6% when it's all said and done. It really is such a small amount of margin, a small amount of income that, I'm not trying to discourage someone who's not running their own home building company, but it is a high risk, not high reward business, really, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I don't think many builders and remodelers that have done it for a long time are in it for strictly the money.
No.
It is, even if it's not the highest profitable industry or profession you can get into, I would argue that it's probably the most rewarding.
100% true.
Yeah. I mean, I get more out of my interaction with the trades. I have this communication matrix that I talk about, that we have to deal with people in 4 directions: upward with our clients, downward with our vendors, sideways with our office colleagues and our staff, and the other side with our design professionals.
Yeah.
So we
great
have
point.
many different directions that we have to communicate, set expectations, and get the most out of those relationships.
Yeah. This is sort of a random side note, but before our lunch meeting today, Tim, I was thinking, for some reason, my grandfather came to mind, and someone was talking to me about job satisfaction yesterday that kind of my mind was circling back. My grandfather was an immigrant, moved to America right after World War I from Europe when it was terrible over there. Got a job, I'm not even sure he graduated from high school, but got a job in a steel mill. And worked for 40-ish years in the steel mill before he had a heart attack at 61. So I'm coming up on his age.
Working in a steel mill will do that to you.
Yeah, working in a steel mill for 40 years was a tough living. And he had a garden to help feed his 7 daughters. And he ran a barbershop on his front porch. Everyone loved him. I'm sad I never got to meet him. He died before I was born. But I wonder what kind of job satisfaction he had working at the steel mill. And here, the job satisfaction, to your point, is fabulous. I mean, honestly, I know lots of people that make plenty more money than me. I know lots of CEOs, and I know lots of people that fly in private jets. I would pit their life any day against mine when it comes to overall life satisfaction and happiness. Now, I don't take my I don't think that all of life is wrapped up in your job. Don't get me wrong here. I'm not trying to say that, but I am trying to say that I really enjoy coming to work every day. And there's something about that in our industry that really seems generally epidemic. Now, if you have a bad job or a bad client, you're not very happy about going to work those days.
Right.
And so circling back on this, one of the ways you can ensure that you have good clients is by making sure that your company is profitable. You need profit. Profit lubricates the gears. If you don't have lubrication, your gears are going to grind to a halt. You're going to go out of business. And many, many of our colleagues have over the years. So please, friends, listening to this podcast, think about your profitability as a company. Make sure that you're making a plan for the coming year, that you're looking at your books on a monthly basis and understanding the directionality that your company is going. Don't take too many risks. Be really cautious about speculative builds. I would say don't do them. We've only done one speculative build since the economy crashed in 2007, and the only reason we did it is because we had 50 sponsor companies that were that were paying us and giving us free materials. That's the only way you can make a spec work as a custom builder, in my opinion. I'm not a fan of taking risks that are going to put my family in dire straits if things go wrong. So be cautious about that and think about your profitability. Any final thoughts, Tim?
No, I think that's a good summary of, we could get in the weeds for 5 different podcasts.
Sure,
about
we absolutely could.
Components of profit. But I think in general, those are the things that all builders and remodelers need to look for and be mindful of. And if they're diligent on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis, make a plan, stick to the plan, communicate that plan to your entire team, then I think they'll be much better off and have a higher chance of success.
Tim Hill, you're a gem, my friend. If you're interested in seeing Tim's Instagram feed, this is kind of fun. Tim is probably the most prepared man I've ever met, and he's absolutely helped me with my everyday carry. Go check out Tim on Instagram at Tim_Reisinger build. He's posting almost on a daily basis with what's in his pockets on a good pocket dump, and he's a former Eagle Scout, so he's got some interesting stuff in his pockets. Plus, he's got some really good record albums as the background for his pocket dump.
Yeah,
as well,
those are Sunday afternoon posts, and I'm sitting there listening to old jazz records and pulling stuff out of my pockets and thinking, do I use this? Should I replace it with something else? And that's how that gets curated. And it'll evolve over time, but it's just a folly.
Yep. Yeah. It's fun, though. Well, and as a side note, just to give you a practical Tim Hill tip, Tim got me for Christmas this past year the O-Clip, which is a very small O-Light clip light. But I ordered on Amazon today, the one that's in your pocket. I already ordered it. What is that, Tim?
It's just an upgrade version of the same light that has 3 different beams, has a floodlight, spotlight, and red light.
O-Clip Pro.
Yep.
And it's it was like $30 on Amazon. This is a very affordable pocket flashlight.
It's the best value out there for a flashlight. It's got a magnet, it's got a clip, very compact, great battery life, easy to recharge, blah, blah, blah. It's just a great light.
Yep, for sure.
And I'm sure Olight will appreciate that plug.
Yeah, as a side note, Olight did provide me free flashlights for years. They don't anymore. And they are 100% Chinese company, made in China. So if you're not a Chinese fan, don't buy from them. But for $30, it's a darn good flashlight, and we don't make a dime from them anymore. So check out the Olight O-Clip Pro, which is the one I just ordered if you're interested. Tim, thanks, brother. Appreciate it. Guys, if you're not subscribers, hit that subscribe button. We do new podcasts really every single Friday. We dump a new one out there. And if you're listening to the podcast on Spotify or Apple, do me a favor. Hit the rating button, if you would. Give us a 5-star if you think we deserve it. Write a comment on how the podcast has been helpful, or give us an idea to improve if you have it. And if you want to watch the podcast, see our awesome new logo and studio, you can see that over on thebuildshow.com, where we also publish the Unbuild It podcast, and we publish the Building Consensus podcast, and one more. What's Brent Hull's podcast? I can't think of it. It's something craftsmanship. I can't think of it. Yeah. Anyways, we got 3 other podcasts besides ours on there, and more coming soon. That being said, follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on the Build Show podcast.